Hello everyone, Morty the Movie Man here. I am super excited today because I am going into my Oscar predictions for the first 6 categories, and I'm very hopeful that this is going to be one of those years to remember. I've not been this excited since my colonoscopy. Now, of course, obviously this year it's going to be incredibly difficult to predict, even more so than previous years, with the writers and the actors strike, which is something that hasn't happened in over 60 years, the two of them striking at the same time. It'll be interesting to see how this impacts the way people vote, how the ceremony itself is going to go if anyone or most people don't show up. At the same time, I really hope there is a huge ceremony, because with all this Barbenheimer advertising, going to movie theaters again, and being so stacked to the brim with folks in the theaters that there are people standing, I haven't seen that in nearly a decade. Granted, it might be different from where you're living, but seeing that is just incredible. It happened in the Super Mario Bros. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And I'm sure it's happened with a bunch of other films too. I have been looking into previous years of the Oscars, and I've looked at how many movies overall have been nominated, excluding the shorts. So that includes documentaries, that includes international features. I currently have somewhere around 35 films getting nominations overall, compared to previous years where they've been around 38 to 40, 41, 42-ish. Not too bad. It's a little low. I think there are a couple of movies I'm completely underestimating. I think I need to tweak it even a bit more, and I might even tweak the categories I go over here now. I'm gonna have a longer video going into all of the categories, except for the short categories, in the near future. But for now, I'm just gonna go over the top 6, the 4 acting categories, directing, and picture. Alright, let's get into it. I'm starting with Best Supporting Actress. This category, it's very hard to predict outside of Lily Gladstone. People have been predicting her for over maybe 2 years now, since this film has been announced. We need to reflect upon atrocities that really have not been delved into that deeply in our own history. The story of Killers of the Flower Moon is surprisingly shocking. Not in terms of what actually happens, but in terms of not knowing mainstream in our society that this did occur. You know, having Lily Gladstone as like the focal point for all of the Osage people could be helpful in terms of focusing the story a bit more, but I think it might be a bit harmful in terms of understanding the complex cultural and social backgrounds of the Osage people themselves through just a single person. I do think Danielle Brooks is going to get in for The Color Purple. However, it was a little underwhelming with the trailer in terms of the cinematography. It kind of annoys me that there are tons of lens flares in a film that is a period piece, and it looks like a commercial. I've heard some mixed reviews about the film itself, so trying to over-predict this film, to me, or thinking that it is very locked in a lot of categories, seems a bit naive, especially when you look at something like Les Miserables, which I know it had mixed reviews too, but it always felt like a huge contender. Les Mis, let's be real, it's perhaps the most beloved Broadway musical of all time, and making an adaptation from the Broadway musical into a film that is anywhere even half as good thematically as the Broadway play would make people super excited to begin with. That movie only got 2 acting nominations. And are we really gonna see more than 2 with The Color Purple, which, while yes, the story is great, yes, the musical is really good, it's not at the level of something like Les Mis, having that prestige factor to it. Granted, of course, the 1985 Spielberg film got 11 nominations, but it's very different from that movie. That movie was not a musical. West Side did really well a couple years ago, but that only got 1 nomination for acting. West Side is in that upper echelon with Les Mis, with that sort of prestige factor of Broadway musicals. And I don't think that this movie, The Color Purple, is in that level. And the rest of this is very exciting. Divine Joy Randolph definitely can get in for The Holdovers. I'm surprised that she has been snubbed at the Emmys for Only Murders in the Building. I think she's great in that show. I predicted her for season 1 getting in for guest actress, and that didn't end up panning out. But she is so funny, so badass. The Holdovers is another film, though, that I'm not gonna lie, I'm very, very confused why people think it's gonna do so well. Oh yes, this professor and his student don't have anywhere to go home to on Christmas, so they end up living together during the holidays. Frankly, it sounds a bit Lifetime movie-esque. Something like Oppenheimer with the threat of nuclear war. I do have Rosamund Pike in for Saltburn because I am very, very excited about what Emerald Fennell is going to do next. I know a lot of people, men and women, were polarized in a bad way by Promising Young Woman, but I thought it was one of the best movies of 2020. I thought Carey Mulligan should have won Best Actress, and I cannot wait to see how this aristocratic family melodrama about a boy obsessed with another student, another male student, how that's going to turn out with Emerald Fennell in the guise of directing. I think it's going to be a movie all the gays are going to love. I think it's going to be a movie anyone who loves thrillers is going to love. And Rosamund Pike, I don't know why you would bet against her. She was the one thing that got in with Gone Girl, and yeah, I mean, we'll see. This, maybe she's not supporting, maybe they'll put her in lead. Maybe this category will feel more competitive as the year goes on. And my final pick, I understand the concern that a Christopher Nolan film, particularly with the acting, with his performances with women in his films, because they are quite male-driven, that they're not going to be deep enough. But I'm really not that concerned with this performance from Florence Pugh. The only thing I'm concerned about with this performance is that there's not enough of it. Not that it's underdeveloped, but that we want more. And that is my only concern here. I think Florence Pugh, the person she is playing, is absolutely the person I am most intrigued by besides Oppenheimer himself. She is very much involved with the whole operation. But with it being a 3-hour film, I do feel like there's room there for her to really shine. Then I have Carey Mulligan in Maestro. You'll see her again for lead actress. I just don't know exactly where to put her. I know she was an artist. She's not just the wife on the side who's not very well developed, regardless of how interesting, intriguing, and smart she is, like in a lot of other films. Her performance is a huge standout. I've heard people say it might even steal the show from Bradley Cooper. And then everyone is predicting Taraji P. Henson. I don't see it at all. This role has never been nominated before for the musical. And she seems like the great supportive friend in the movie. But it does not, I'm sorry, it does not seem like an Oscar performance whatsoever. Not that she won't be great. It's Taraji P. Henson. She's great in everything. Can only get 2 acting nominations. If West Side Story can only get 1 acting nomination, the first only getting 2. Why on earth would this one get more than 2? Okay, there is an exception with Chicago, but Chicago won Best Picture. Alright, Best Supporting Actor. Yeah, this is another one where I feel all over the place, so I'm just going with the people who everyone thinks is going to be in. Robert De Niro is absolutely going to be in for Killers of the Flower Moon. I think he's going to win it at this point. Don't really even see reason to try and argue that. John Majaro, again, this is an indie film that is doing super well. If you can get the critics to love you, where you're in the 90s on Metacritic, but then the audience have watched it, and you're solidly in the mid 8 point somethings on IMDb with thousands and thousands of votes, people love this film. Then for the rest of the spots, I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea. I currently have Willem Dafoe in for Poor Things because it gives me Frankenstein vibes. There's this deadpan quality to him that is very intriguing from the trailer. And I know there is concern about this film being released so early in September that it might not even be the biggest contender for the studio. But after that trailer, I am not sure there's a single other film aesthetically that I'm more excited to see than Poor Things this year. Ryan Gosling getting in for Barbie seems so strange to me, but if Jamie Lee Curtis can win for Everything Everywhere All at Once as Deirdre Beaudry, this definitely can get in and perhaps win too. Especially if there doesn't end up really feeling like a front runner by the end of the race. I know I'm saying Robert De Niro, but it's a very evil performance. Not much redemption there. And yeah, I'm gonna put Robert Downey Jr. in for Oppenheimer. I know there's a lot of concern, like, oh, maybe he's not in it that much. Same with Florence Pugh. What I will say to that, though, is last couple of years, a lot of the lesser screen time performances, like in Belfast, like in The Fabelmans, got in over the performance that a lot of people thought would get in because they were more essential to the plot. And as you can see, my runner-up pick is Rami Youssef for Poor Things. And Poor Things is a movie that I am very scared about over-predicting with again, and Willem Dafoe just feels like the person who would fall back on for a nominee, with it being this quirky, campy performance that is also extremely nuanced. Granted, the other person could be Mark Ruffalo, but I don't know. I feel like it's campy, over the top, perhaps without too much depth. I don't know. Maybe I'm over-analyzing that here. Charles Melton, May December. I currently don't have May December getting in anywhere. I just feel like if Carol couldn't get in with its subject matter, I don't know why, for Best Picture at least. I don't know why May December would. I'm sure I know it's well made. I know people really enjoy it, but the subject matter just seems almost too cringy in terms of getting awards love. And that's what my main concern with this film overall is, regardless of how worthy it would be or not. Jacob Elordi, if people really love Saltburn, I could definitely see this happening. Again, I just don't know how central he'll be to the story psychologically, but I'm assuming as the person who is being stalked by the... I'm assuming it's that way. It's not the reverse way where he's stalking Barry Keoghan. I'm sure there's lots of trauma and anxiety as the person being stalked and followed. Best Actress. I think this is going to be one of perhaps the most exciting categories of the year, because I think there are going to be a lot of career best performances. So I have Fantasia Barrino in first place for The Color Purple. After seeing this performance performed, granted by Cynthia Erivo instead of Fantasia, in 2015 at the Tony Awards, that might still be the best performance I've ever seen at the Tony Awards. She beat Philippa Sue in Hamilton, which is insane. Waitress was also out that year. It was a great, great year for Broadway musicals. It's that powerful of a performance. I don't know, every other performance that I have in my top 4 is a performance that feels like people are gonna love it, but it just doesn't feel like it will have that stamp of approval for, oh yeah, this needs to win an Oscar. I have Greta Lee in Past Lives in second, and I think this movie is almost a lock for Best Picture, and I don't even have Color Purple in Best Picture at this point. I haven't gotten around to being able to do it yet, but I really want to see all of the performances in this film. I know it's that sort of indie favorite of the year at this moment with the breakout at Sundance. Sandra Hüller, I would not rule her out for a win though. If Anatomy of a Fall can get awards buzz and awards love and tons of critics groups voting and having her win a lot of the critics awards for this performance, that could really help propel her into a frontrunner status, especially if The Color Purple does end up not being all that great. Another thing about Anatomy of a Fall is it won the Palme d'Or, which has kind of been hit or miss recently. I mean, much more so hit, especially after Parasite won at Cannes. Critics really love it. It's at an 89 or 88 on Metacritic right now. Audiences seem to enjoy it quite a bit from the ones that have seen it. It's at like a 7.7, but not even, I think, 1,000 reviews yet on IMDb. And my fourth pick is Jessica Lange in Long Day's Journey into Night. You know, Katharine Hepburn performed this for the 1962 film, and she got nominated for that. Another tour de force performance. It might be her best, career best, and she'll be on screen for a lot of it. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know much about the story. It just seemed... And then Margot Robbie I'm really on the fence about. I think she very well could get in as one of the biggest, if not the biggest film of the year. The same publicity that Oppenheimer's getting, and if I'm putting Cillian Murphy in for Best Actor, why not her? Part of me, though, is also worried that there's tons of buzz with Ryan Gosling right now. And I think a lot of energy can go towards him. Perhaps in a sexist way, all the energy going towards him and a lot of it going away from her. I don't know. I feel like people are gonna say, is this really an awards-worthy performance? Playing Barbie in a different way from playing Ken because, oh, a man's in this type of film? Wow, that's cool to see a man not be so toxic masculinity-esque. It also could be that she's more of the straight man, so to say, of the film than Ryan Gosling. That's why he steals the scenes, because she's going through a lot of dramatic and comedic moments, whereas he's much more the comic relief, much more of a scene stealer as a result, because she's going through the whole arc of, oh, I need to explore the real world. Currently I have a different comedic performance in for Best Actress, Emma Stone in Poor Things, and one of the things that's making me not drop her at this point is that she said it's the most fun she's ever had for her character, and seeing her in the trailer, she is just an absolute delight. There's robotic movements to her, there's this childlike quality, this process of her regaining her ability to function, her motor functions with her brain after coming back from the dead. How can you not nominate this? Best Actor. Currently, I'm not even sure. I might change after I go through this video. But I do have Leonardo DiCaprio in first because people are saying it is his career best performance, and it would make sense since a lot of his scenes are with Lily Gladstone. Having that romantic connection, it would be a very nice dual winning acting combination, but something tells me that's too good to be true. I might put Cillian Murphy in first because of how psychologically invested Oppenheimer was in building of the bomb. He looks fried in this film, and it is astonishing. I can't believe he doesn't have some sort of nomination, if not win at this point, for some of his films. Be it Inception, The Wind That Shakes the Barley, maybe for, in TV, Peaky Blinders. This could be one of those all-time great performances. Not just because of how he can resonate with this actual character, but how he can bring those anxieties of that character into today's world and make him relatable to the anxieties that people from all generations in today's world go through. It's just, again, with it being a Christopher Nolan film, I want to make sure that this really is the performance of Cillian's career. The last 3 spots, I think Bradley Cooper can get in for Maestro. Obviously the correlation between makeup and hair with this category, but last year with Brendan Fraser in The Whale, is very much linked to transformation and getting a win here. Combine that with the fact that he's playing a real person, a person who was successful against odds, being gay, being a creative genius, a creative force. You know, he's going on 10 nominations without a win at this point. Maybe it's his time. It seems like a very tough category this year, but he could pull it off. My next pick is Barry Keoghan. He is someone I could see potentially even winning here too, if this character arc is so phenomenal. For all we know, this could be another Silence of the Lambs-esque thriller, doing things that we've never seen before in film, story-wise, with the psychology, kind of like Silence of the Lambs. It would very much secure his status as one of the great up-and-coming actors. And my last pick, I know some people are saying Coleman Domingo, and it very well could happen. Very well could be Paul Giamatti. He's never gotten in and he's been snubbed so much. But there's something to be said about an actor who is so beloved, who is getting on in age, who can really stand out from the pack. And I do have Anthony Hopkins in here. Speaking of Silence of the Lambs, what makes me really excited about this film, but particularly this performance, is it's based off a play, but a play that was only about 30-something pages long. Being a feature film, I cannot wait to see how big special effects or dream sequences can come into play here visually to bring that play to a whole nother level in film. And I think all that combined with a great performance from Anthony Hopkins definitely could propel him to a nomination here. I just wish there was more room in this category because there are so many great performances vying for 5 spots, even though of course we haven't seen most of them. But Best Director, I actually just switched number 1 and 2. I now have Christopher Nolan in number 1. Yeah, there could be concerns that maybe this film will feel a little long. That'll be anywhere near a majority or even a major minority of people after seeing this film. Most of the reactions that have come out so far is that it feels utterly devastating, and it's exhilarating as much as it is terrifying. This is his first film that I really think the characters are taking over the atmosphere, and that's helping the themes push through to an end where his filmmaking, I think, can be even more accessible now. I absolutely see Martin Scorsese getting in too for Killers of the Flower Moon, again bringing the story of the Osage people to the screen for the first time, really, where they are at the heart of the story and not just talked about or made caricatures, cowboys and Indians style. This can really, even if it doesn't go far enough, it can still help change the way that indigenous peoples of America are viewed on screen, and hopefully even who tells these stories. Hopefully there will be more indigenous filmmakers. Then I have Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest, and I feel like this is going to be such a gut punch of a film. 98 on Metacritic, I hear there are people who are like, oh, maybe it's going to get snubbed, like, for this or that reason. It's going to feel unlike a lot of other awards, films that get in here, a lot of international films. It's too strange for the Academy. I get that his filmmaking style is different with things like Under the Skin. It's even the audiences themselves don't really like it. Some people find it boring, some people find it lingering, whatever. But this is about an actual time period, about something that actually happened, and it's another thing that we can't forget, and it's told, the story itself is told in a way completely different than any other Holocaust film. And the fact that it has a 98 on Metacritic, the fact that audiences who have seen it seem to like it with like an 8.2 on IMDb, I kind of want to squash that conversation because I just don't see it being that big of an issue. It seems like an incredibly necessary film showing that people who are bystanders are not necessarily evil people at heart, and that they tag along with the atrocities that occur because there is so much that they are blind to in seeing that they are being bystanders. Fascinating work, and I think a lot of people are going to think that this is revolutionary thinking. It's not. It's just an unfortunate reality. Those binaries we have, that good versus evil, means that good people are just inherently born good, bad people are just inherently born bad, is just way too black and white. There are, however, bad people who are just bad, who have always been bad, and there are people who have always been good, who always push themselves. But when you take in mental health, all these cultural aspects where maybe people move from one place to another and now they feel like outcasts, you have to look at the world in a very gray lens sometimes to understand why people act the way they are. And it's almost disappointing that a film like this hasn't really been made before. It hasn't been this complex. And then we have Celane's song for Past Lives. This again just feels like it would be ridiculous that she does not get in for how much people love this film, how much critics love this film. Then we have, I'm going to put Denis Villeneuve in for Dune Part 2 because I do think there are people who are really pissed off that he didn't get in for the first one. I think knowing that this film is going to get a ton of nominations again, that it could be even better and be more exciting than the first one because the first one did have a lot of build-up. Yeah, it makes sense at this point. Why not? I would love to see Emerald Fennell get in for Saltburn. And then you look at Poor Things with Yorgos Lanthimos and you wonder, how is this not in the top 5 with how incredible its technical achievements are? And I think it just comes down to if people can resonate with this film outside of the trailer. Anatomy of a Fall, La Chimera, El Conde. Let's have this category dominated by international directors, why not, if it's deserving. So here we are, Best Picture predictions, and just like with directing, I switched 1 and 2 for picture. I now have Oppenheimer winning Best Picture at this moment. I just feel like we haven't had a huge film in a while that is going to be a huge commercial success, a huge critical success, that is so timely. I think where this film might have even a bit more of an edge is that it feels like a huge cinematic experience. This feels like a movie you want to see in a big theater. You want to see in an IMAX or incredible, huge, glorious movie palace. It feeling both horrifying but also exhilarating. Echoes like a Schindler's List, where it's like just so culturally important and necessary as a document for all the generations to come. I think this getting helped by the Barbie campaign too is also really gonna help it. considering it is a 3-hour film, say what you will about Nolan's films, but they are visually stunning. I think the script, because it's based off such great source material, could even win adapted screenplay, maybe. Then we have Killers of the Flower Moon in second. Again, huge, important film. I think it might get slight criticisms for it not being more representative of the Osage people and more through their own POVs. Critics are already loving it. So I think those two are locks. I would throw Past Lives in there. Indie movies are really making waves, and this one, unlike, I don't know if there's been a film that has really hit as hard as this has in the last 5 years at Sundance. It feels like a very accessible story, tons of heart, tons of humor. Dune Part 2 at number 4. If the first one can get in with 10 nominations, and it seemed a little bit skeptical with some of the reviews. It was slightly mixed, but overall still pretty good. I think this one's going to do even better. I think the addition of people like Florence Pugh and Austin Butler into the cast can only help further propel its status as this technical giant with great performances too. The Zone of Interest, I've already said, an important film. I think it's pretty much a lock at this point. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I don't know if there's been a more visually stunning animated film of the 21st century. As someone who's not a huge fan of the comics or who has read the comics, the lore of it connecting to the comics stories, the multiverse, the way of linking them all together in a film to build it up so that you can explore all these worlds, is very innovative, and people freaking love it. My only concern is the first one only got 1 nomination, but that also was because it performed way better critically than I think any of the executives thought it would. So now it can get in, I think can get like at least 5 nominations. Saltburn, again, it feels like a Whiplash-esque experience here. Perhaps queer themes to it. Barry Keoghan is beloved. So is Rosamund Pike. So is Carey Mulligan, who's also in Maestro, which is the 8th film here. This is a film that has so much backing behind Netflix, which does make me a bit skeptical because of the strikes, but it is Netflix. I think it's going to be their big player. Maybe they're doing enough now that it'll help propel it to a nomination, especially if the strike impacts how many movies people actually see, even if the quality of this film is not as great as some of the others based off the test screenings. I think they're going to do everything they can to make it as good as possible. Then I have Anatomy of a Fall at 9th, simply because I do think Sandra could win the Oscar if The Color Purple isn't that great, and it feels like a film that is conventional enough to understand why it won the Palme d'Or, and that could translate over. It feels very character-driven. But then I do have Poor Things. I'm skeptical with the September release, but I also think with the strike, maybe it not premiering too late could help it regardless of the reviews. And again, it's just the most impressive trailer I've seen this year. It might be a case of people getting in without much campaigning, and that might equal passion getting in over campaigning, which would be exciting to see. I want a great ceremony again. I want that sort of camaraderie. I wasn't alive when Titanic came out, but just seeing the figures for how many people watched it, kind of like Super Bowl-esque amount of excitement behind watching a show like this. I really want it to go back to that. I'm just incredibly excited about the movies this year, about the fandom around the films. Crossovers between, again, Oppenheimer and Barbie, taking the color palettes for each, switching them tonally on their posters. Stuff like that just is super exciting, and it makes me, for all the times I hate the internet, seeing one little poster of Barbie in front of a nuclear explosion. Just, it makes my day. It really makes me happy. Make sure to like and subscribe below. And be sure to follow me on Letterboxd and Instagram with the links in my bio.